Let's go, line one. Hi, Tracy. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. Good morning. How are you?
Terrific. Thank you for asking. How are you?
Good. I'm calling in about the Humber Valley Paving Company. My husband and I owned a business, and we did millions of dollars worth of work for the territorial and federal government for years, building homes. And I am just baffled at how Mr. Coleman could have ever gotten out of a contract that he had signed, a legal document, providing so many kilometers for $19 million.
Yeah.
I think, Patty, it's another perfect example of the big boys club in control and not doing what needs to be done, certainly not taking care of the average taxpayers. I know that a government contract is probably 20, 40, even 60 pages long, and I'll admit, even myself, I've probably never read it from cover to cover.
Fair enough.
But what I do know is that when I signed it, the commitment that I made for the work that I was supposed to do and for the money that I was promised, I always upheld that contract. So I want to know how Frank Coleman can get out of that contract, and we as taxpayers are sitting back and allowing this.
Well, I don't know. You're asking me a question that I can't answer, but I understand where you're going with this. So when the company says that they had issues that were out of their control, do you accept or buy any of that?
I don't buy it, and I'll tell you why. The harshest living and working conditions in this country is in Nunavut and the Northwest Territories, and that is where we did the bulk of our work.
Okay.
I would bid on a contract going into a community where there was only one flight in a week. So if an electrician, and first of all, I want to say that all of my employees were from here in Newfoundland. So if I was waiting on an electrician to show up on my job site and we were needing him, and he got fogged in Newfoundland for 2 or 3 days, and then arrived in Yellowknife and because of a snowstorm couldn't get in, that was money that was coming out of my pocket. I couldn't go back to the territorial federal government looking for money. There's lots of situations where there's things that are not within your control. But if you have someone properly doing up your budgeting and what your costs are going to be, you have to allow for that.
Yeah.
You can't go back after crying because you didn't make money. Not every job is meant to make money. I mean, obviously, if everything works in your favor, yeah, you're going to make money. There was jobs I made more money than I thought I was going to make, and
Sure.
then there was jobs I made very little money. But regardless, I never expected the taxpayers of this country to step up to the plate because I did something wrong. And that's exactly what Frank Coleman is doing. And I'm tired of it. I'm sick and tired of watching what's going on here in this province.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tricky one for all parties involved, for the government
it's
and
not tricky. There's nothing tricky about it.
Well, there
it's
is.
because of who it is.
Well,
it's because of who it is, Patty. That's all. And we should be embarrassed that this is who we're wanting to be our next premier. Last week, VOCM and the Telegram had a write-up about a mob on the inside of Her Majesty's Penitentiary.
Uh-huh.
We've got one on the outside working for us that we're all watching and doing nothing about. The only jobs they do is the ones that can line their pockets. And if they can't line their pockets, this is what they do. And then there's not even a
who
call
line pockets? The government officials are lining their pockets with this stuff?
Absolutely.
That's a mouthful.
Oh, big mouthful that I'm willing to say because that's exactly what's going on. Well, exactly.
So
it's terrible, and nobody. And we talk about whistleblower legislation. Brad Cabana, with Rock Solid Politics, is on every day talking about what's going on in this province, and nobody is listening. They're all threatened by this man. Nobody is listening. Since in the last week or so, since I hear him on there, has gone on to that. I mean, if you read what's on there, and if 1/10 of what this man is saying is correct, we should be scared. 1/10.
Point taken.
So what I'm saying is, as a taxpayer in this province and in this country, I worked hard. I always stayed by the rules of what I was bound by within that contract. And I think it's terrible that we should be allowing any person, not just Frank Coleman, any person to get out of the contract that he signed, sealed, and delivered. And all would have been well if the man was going to line his pockets. But as soon as he felt that he couldn't line his
lining pockets? Are we talking about the paving company or the government lining pockets?
I'm talking about right now about the fact that Frank Coleman, who was the owner of Humber Valley Paving, got out of a contract that he had with the provincial government. And
it's not the first time it's ever happened.
Oh, I agree. Absolutely. I didn't say that. But that doesn't make it right. And what I'm saying is this is now the man that in a few months is going to be our premier. I mean, the people who are in those positions are people that we're supposed to look up to and respect and know that they're going to make the right moral decisions. If they can't make them out in real life, why are they going to make it on the inside?
My problem here is not with the paving company. My problem and questions are offered to the government. Because if I have a contract with anybody to do anything, it just makes sense to me. And I've been in this position before where I've gone to someone and said, hey, the deal we signed is not working out. If you have two legitimate willing partners, you sit down and evaluate the landscape. And sometimes contracts are revisited. Times are extensions are offered for deadlines. There's change in fees sometimes in contracts, and I know it to be true because I've been involved with it. My problem here is not that Humber Valley Paving said, hey, can you cut us some slack here? Because that's what I would do if I was in a position to lose money on any kind of business. Even though you think you're just taking a flyer, the worst thing anyone could say is no. So what? Why not ask? My problem is the perception that the government saw fit to do this, and the timing just doesn't add up. People are justifiably, like you, are irritated and wonder aloud, how does this happen? If any business approaches the government and says, look, I got a problem with this contract, can we talk about it? If the government says yes, then you quietly hang up the phone and go, hoo-hoo, yeah, here we go, I'm getting off the hook. But the government doesn't need to do it. So when the timing is granted, this luxury is afforded to the incoming premier, we all have a question or 10 to ask about it. And I totally understand what you're saying. My problem's not with Humber Valley Paving, the problem's with the government.
Well, and I agree, but it goes back to what I said before. The big boys club, it's all a big padding. They all protect each other. I feel that if that was me today, I'd be held accountable to it. And you know what? No one would have to hold me accountable because I would be morally within the bounds of that contract. And I would say, and I know things happened last year with the fire up there. But yeah.
Morals have nothing to do with this.
Well, obviously, because if morals had something to do with it, we wouldn't be even talking about it.
Have you ever entered into a contract where you had a hard time completing the task and needed a deadline?
Well, and that was another thing. Thank you for mentioning that. Most times our contracts we had two major components. One was within timeline and one within budget. And our contracts in the north were labor only, so government was responsible to ship all the materials for these houses that we built to the communities. But the way the contract was stated, once 7 days upon arriving on site, we had to take ownership of materials, which meant we had to do a material count. Well, sometimes, Patty, when you had 50 and 60 containerfuls of materials, there was no way from a manpower point of view that you could have ever done it. So after a few years of having no problems, we kind of just said, okay, sign it off, right? Yeah. Well, one time in particular, it was a federal government job, and the federal government is much more strict with their finals on it, and they came in 2 days before they were supposed to arrive. There was 4 cupboard doors missing. 4, that's it. And we knew that the inspection could not happen without those 4 cupboard doors. And we were up in, I don't know if it was Tuktoyaktuk or Toloyoak, and we needed 4 cupboard doors, and it cost us almost $8,000 to get those 4 cupboard doors shipped in from Calgary. Yeah. $8,000 was a good chunk of our profit. But no one cared, and I certainly wasn't going to not have those 4 doors there.
No one cared, or you didn't ask if they cared?
The federal government generally say you're bound by the contract.
I know what people generally say. I mean, and I've unfortunately had to do stuff for them too. But did you ask, or are you just saying, you know what, I'll throw up your arms and you suffer the consequences?
I didn't ask because I think probably morally, I just felt that I had signed off on something saying everything was there, and I didn't. So I didn't think that anybody else had to pay for my mistake.
Yeah, I think the vast majority of people will ask if they have problems in their contract. Will ask when there is a response that comes from government, whether it be the federal or the provincial or the municipal governments. If they do indeed cut me a break that they would not cut someone else, then we all have a problem with that. But I don't begrudge anybody, any company going to anybody they've got a contractual obligation with and saying, hey, I got an issue here. Sometimes contracts are revisited all the time, so I'm not concerned with Humber Valley Paving's position on this. I'm concerned with the government's position on this, and I'm going to stand by that, because if I was in their position, I'd do the same thing. But the fire put us out of schedule. I cannot complete the work. Short paving season. We're going to lose money. Can we do something about this contract? That's what I would do if I was running a paving company. So I don't begrudge them one tiny bit. It's the government's response that I think we should all be concerned with and ask questions of.
And why would they have $12 million paid in on a job? Most government jobs are based on the amount of work you have done. So if it's based on that, that's how mine was always done. I had pay periods when I got 40% of the work done, they gave me 30% of my pay. They always kept 10% back. So what the government here now is giving more than what the work is, what's actually done. I just think there's too much.
Once again, that's a government issue. That's a government issue. Yeah. We're going to lay it all on Mr. Coleman's lap. If he was done a courtesy or a favor or was given something that I couldn't get because I'm not the incoming premier, that's the problem.
Well,
it is not the problem that they asked for.
That's the problem, but that's not. There's too much blood on Mr. Coleman's hands right now. I think
that's a harsh thing to say, but anyway, I get it.
Well, but I don't. But what based on what's being put out there,
paving stuff, right? But I mean, I know you're frustrated.
Based on what's being put out there about owing money to companies and stuff, yes. Regardless if he then at that point was the owner of the Humber Valley Paving or not, I think morally he should have paid his bills. And if he knew that this was his, to be a politician was in his future, he needed to do things in a more proper way in order for people not to judge him. I think it's lovely that we're going to have a premier from Corner Brook. I know.
I tell you what, there's anyone who's been in business for any amount of time, including a lot of people who are elected officials right now, if everyone thinks that all of a sudden Frank Coleman is the only one who's ever had a problem with a contract, then I think we're all being willfully naive here. Every person in that House of Assembly who has a business has had a problem with a contract and paying bills. I guarantee it. But we're judging Coleman differently because it's the flavor of the day. It's the good people are sick of the PCs, they're sick of this process, they don't understand how this has worked. So I think we're giving Coleman...
It's not nothing to do with me being...
Well, it is. You just said they're all corrupt and all the rest of it. So, I mean, who else are you talking about?
But I don't mean just the PCs. I think in general. At this point now, I think in general. I'm not sick of the PCs.
People can give whoever they want a hard time because that's the way the world works. And if you're a politician or an aspiring politician, you face a different level of scrutiny than you and I and others do. And that's all fair ball because I do it to them. And that's too bad. If they don't like it, too bad, quit. But we are laying some stuff on his lap that I'm telling you, if you think that everyone else in business has never done something like what Humber Valley Paving did in this particular instance, I think we're willfully just piling on as opposed to the realities of what goes on in contracts. There's people in the House of Assembly who have screwed the pooch on a contract, missed deadlines and overspent, went back to the well looking for more money. It's how the world works. The problem is with what the government did. That's it.
No, I agree. I agree. No, absolutely. I cannot disagree. But again, we cannot sit on the sidelines and act stupid like we don't know the difference. This is the first time in my life I've ever called into a radio show.
I'm glad you did.
And that's just because, as a woman, first of all, I was working in a man's world, so that was already tough enough. And to sit back now, and then last week they had a forum of why women don't get into politics. This is why. Because you're so outnumbered.
What? This is why women don't get into politics is what?
This is one of the reasons, Patty. There's many reasons.
Why don't they get in? Just say that again.
I said this is one of the reasons. Just you feel outnumbered when you're not in that big boys club. It's tough.
Oh, come on. Seriously?
Oh, absolutely.
Seriously?
Absolutely.
Well,
and I'm a pretty tough woman. Trust me.
That sounds like an excuse to me, not a reason.
Well, no, not necessarily.
It does,
not necessarily. Women are probably a bit more soft in the sense that they wouldn't want constant every day in your face being picked on.
But that's
a part of it. I get that. I do get that.
Yeah.
Right? But the protectionism with these big boys club is crazy. And it's not only here, it's everywhere.
And there's women in that club. I guarantee you there's women in that club.
I know there is. Yeah. Absolutely.
Tracy,
but I don't want to get off topic. Like I said, I'm just frustrated.
All good.
I've always stayed within the bounds. I felt that was my right. Well, that was the right to the taxpayers of this country. And I just think that you're right. There's too many of them doing it. But we're allowing it too, especially when we know about it.
Well, we don't have to allow it. We can talk about it whenever you see fit. When you call this program, I've really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you call again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, Tracy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, people are frustrated, boy, with a lot of stuff. I mean, there's a lot of real serious questions to be asked. Now, you and I both know that it does make people uncomfortable, and some people are squirming when these questions get asked. But the reality of life is, and I'm not going to go down this women in politics road, if you're getting into business and you want to be the premier, or if you want to be a city council person, whatever, it comes with a certain amount of scrutiny that if you're not comfortable with it, then you're just kind of in the wrong game. Now, is some of what we say about them and some of what we accuse them of shallow, hollow, unsubstantiated, and otherwise. Some of the ways we critique them, the savage way we treat them, some of that is not deserved and is completely hogwash. But the other, intense scrutiny and all the legitimate questions and concerns that are lobbied or levied at these people, either put up with it or quit.